Thank you, Johnny. Good to see you on this stage yet again, second year in a row, reprising the global threat brief at OODA. It's such an expansive topic. So much has happened in the last year, obviously, and even in the past day alone, that we really need to focus the parameters of this discussion to maximize the benefits and takeaways for this audience of very sophisticated corporate citizens and otherwise. Bob often says to frame this discussion that we want to talk about all of these very important salient topics of the threat landscape as a way of advising a corporate board of directors. So we're gonna discuss global threats in the context of how executive decision makers should think about and incorporate these threats to protect their organizations, employees, and of course, reputations. Yesterday was a big day, and we've talked about a lot of components of the threat landscape, Johnny, both last year, last week when you and I spoke. Just at the top here, how does the second Trump presidency that is forthcoming shape your assessment of the national security threat landscape? What worries you more, and what is encouraging to you about a Trump presidency?
Okay. All right. So first of all, I want to start the discussion off by thanking you all for having me back here for another year. I always enjoy OODA conference. I would tell you it is my most favorite. And that's because every conversation that I have, I learn something new from the individuals that are here. And so I think that's extra special. So Jen, as an interrogator, I will actually validate Bob's comments. You are in fact an interrogator, but you do it so well. Right? No softball questions. So I got my lifeline out there. Mike Groen, wave your hand. All right. Yeah. In the event that I can respond to a question, he will. All right. So we're going to start off with politics. Yeah. But I think it was Will Hurd, or it may have been John Miller, who said earlier that he had a conversation with someone who told him that they envy the United States because we don't know who our next president is going to be. It's not set in stone. And that is absolutely right. And so each president, each administration is another opportunity to roll the dice, right? To reset policies, to reset conditions around the world, to ensure that America retains its position in the global power structure. And so with the election or re-election of President Trump, I think it provides us that opportunity as well. And when you hear the rhetoric around the world, whether it's coming from our adversaries such as China or Russia, or from our friends such as Israel, there's a narrative out there that America is in decline, okay? I don't think that is true, and I think that with President Trump coming on board, he has the opportunity to change that narrative. What will he do? I have no idea, okay? I didn't predict the election, okay? I have no crystal ball, as Will said, but I do know that the policies that he will put in place will be different than the previous administration, and that all political leaders, okay, have to respond to the environment in which they're in, okay? There are events that will cause decisions to be made that will change the trajectory of the course of our country. Now, I think that because he does have a reputation for negotiation, that he has made some statements about ending the Ukraine conflict, that he has talked about the support of Israel, those are probably going to be on the top of his agenda. And so our relationship vis-a-vis Ukraine, vis-a-vis NATO, okay, and Israel is going to be different than what it was under the Biden administration. I think you're going to see more support for Israel and the fight that they're in. I think that he will be driven, though, by our allies in the region to moderate it to the extent that the Palestinian people aren't under more dire conditions than they are now. Okay, so I think there's going to, there will be some moderation. In Russia, Ukraine, I think he's going to push for a settlement. He's already said that in his mind there ought to be a negotiated peace where Ukraine gives up some of its territory. I think that's where the conversation is going to start. What part of the territory? I don't know. Maybe it's Crimea that has been under Russian control since 2014. Maybe it's part of the Donbass. But I think that is the conversation that he's going to have with them. All right? NATO. NATO has been one of our most important strategic partners for about 75 years, 1949, almost 75 years, yeah. And so the relationship that we have with NATO, I think it is critical to our ability to stay at the top of the global power structure. It is our allies, our partners, okay, that give us the strength that we have, whether it's the NATO, the Five Eyes, or our partners in the Pacific with Japan and South Korea. It is those partnerships that allow us to be so successful in spreading American culture and ensuring that our economic viability remains. And so I think that the rhetoric that you heard will continue, that he will push to have those countries and or organizations provide more of their defense. But I do not think that it's going to be a wholesale abandonment of our allies and partners. The conversation may be one of isolationist, and America does have a history of being an isolationist, but I don't think that's where we're going. I don't think the world will allow us to do so. Okay.
We've talked about the realignment of global powers that we're seeing. How do you see that realignment affecting us in economic and business terms in this room? And to the extent that you can comment on how a Trump presidency will inform, shape, maybe improve, maybe exacerbate that realignment and how that affects us, again, as a business community, that would be very interesting.
All right, thanks, Jen. So there are some trends that no one individual or country is going to be able to impact. So there's a convergence right now as we transition to a new age. That is this information technology age that we find ourselves in and that was spoken to earlier. There's also the shift or realignment in the global power structure. So the United States for a number of years was a unipolar power, okay? No one had the ability to do everything that we do. There was no rival to us. We're now in a multipolar world, okay? And so those trends, that convergence, is driving some major sort of changes in how we operate, how businesses will operate. One, globalization is not dead, okay? But regionalization is going to become much stronger than what we've seen in the past. There will be a reshoring, a realignment of our supply chains to ensure that we have assurance, okay, that those components will be available when we need them and where we need them. So that regionalization is going to become an important factor for our country. And as a matter of fact, it's for everywhere. You're going to see regionalization. There will be realignments in terms of partnerships. Now, for the United States, again, I mentioned earlier that we hope that those partnerships will continue that we have on a global basis, but we'll also have to strengthen our partnerships within our region. And you see that realignment is being done by other countries. Europe, okay, is looking for a better regionalized supply base. They're looking for regional responses, okay, to the crises that are happening within their area. And their response to the current Ukraine crisis is based upon the impact to them from a regional perspective, and so that's driving some changes in the environment. Let me talk about it from a business perspective, as you asked. So if you look at the Ukraine conflict, Ukraine, Russia were responsible for a significant portion of commodities that went into Europe, whether that's raw materials that are mined, whether it's agricultural, okay, they were leading in wheat production, whether that was in the components for a number of our technologies, okay, silicon, for example. They were for Europe, they were a major supplier of those components, which is now not available to them. And so there's a realignment of supply chains to ensure that they're able to obtain those materials. Refugees, about 6 million, I think, Ukrainians are now in Europe. And so that puts a lot of pressure on the system in order to find them, viable employment, housing to support them, and also the talent base for which they're drawing has changed somewhat with those folks being in Europe. From a business perspective, that means that you're seeing an increase in energy costs within Europe. They're no longer receiving natural gas from Russia, okay? And so that opens up opportunities for America, okay, to supply them with those commodities, liquid natural gas and such. The commodities that they don't have, they're looking to find alternative routes, as I mentioned, and so there's opportunities for companies that are in technology, okay, to provide those components. Let me see what's it. When you look at renewables, okay, so it's a volatile energy market right now when you look at Europe. And so when you look at things that are related to renewable energy, they're looking for those capabilities. And so for U.S. companies, okay, that's an opportunity, that's a market. There's also the cyber threat that's being posed by Russia, okay? And so for companies that are dealing with cyber threat, there are opportunities that are there as well. Now, there's risk for U.S. companies, okay? And so let's take that, the cyber, that's a double-edged sword. And so if you're supporting Europe, you're supporting NATO, you're supporting Ukraine, then you're also a target for the Russians. So, all right?
Thank you. That's a very thorough answer. You anticipated some questions, but I do want to move on. This came up earlier, but I'm going to use a term that you used to me when we spoke last week. This emergence and outsized impact of what you called super empowered individuals, and maybe we might call them oligarchs, American or global flavors of oligarchs. How do you see these individuals upending the national security apparatus? And I want to ask that in an even-handed way. Upending in a pejorative way, but are they helping in any regard?
All right.
And I think you know who I'm talking about, and feel free to name them.
Yes. So, sorry. So the answer to that question is yes, right, to both. Look, there was a conversation earlier about the nation state and whether or not it was in decline. I think John Miller said that he didn't believe it was, but then he came back and he said, I've got an asterisk. And an asterisk was corporations and individuals that had outside influence. I call those super empowered individuals. And so when we look at those folks, and I'll name Elon Musk in this particular case, but I'm going to take it in the context of providing a state-like capability, the C2 that he provides for Ukraine. Elon made the decision that he would not provide the Ukrainians C2 over Crimea for a certain operation that they were doing. I mean, it was public press, so there's nothing that I'm talking about the secret. But that was an individual that made the decision to deny that capability to a nation state. Now, many of us say, well, that's not us. That's not going to happen because we have those capabilities. But more and more, the advanced technologies that we're seeing are in the hands of private companies or individuals. And those individuals do not have control mechanisms right now from the state or from the international, I was going to say power structure or environment, but as you guys know, there's a breakdown in that as well right now. But again, the point is that there's no governors on what they do. And so when I look at those companies and those individuals, I do worry. I do have concern that the technology that they're developing will not be for the benefit of all society. That for the countries in which they're developing those capabilities may not derive the value from them that they should, and it may not be shared with all. I also realize that companies have a profit motive, okay? They have to deal with shareholders, and so they'll make decisions that are in the best interest, and that individuals sometimes make decisions based upon their own moral beliefs or ego, okay? And we should not be held hostage to those decisions. So I think that there has to be some level of governance that is placed on these individuals to ensure that the benefit of these technologies accrue to society as a whole. Okay.
What do those controls look like in as practical terms as possible? How do we modulate that influence to ensure we're not in the position that you were just discussing that was especially vulnerable?
Okay. So first of all, I would tell you that government doesn't have sufficient knowledge to independently develop the rules that would allow us to moderate or govern the behavior of those individuals. I think that there has to be some level of public-private partnership that allows for a symbiotic relationship that will allow that individual or company to achieve their goals, to be profitable or whatever their other business opportunity goals are, while at the same time protecting the public interest. If AGI gives us a tenth of what it promises, right? We don't want that in the hands of an individual. We don't want that in the hands of a corporation that it can restrict its use. As for me, it affects all of the modern technologies that we're looking at, from quantum computing to biotechnology to energy, the fusion that we talked about earlier. And so that partnership will ensure that the government has an adequate understanding of the technologies and where it's going. It will allow them to collectively develop rules that don't stifle innovation, okay? But also ensures that the public interest is taken into consideration as they develop these capabilities.
I want to ask you a philosophical question. What does the existence of these oligarchs say about our society, and how do they make us vulnerable?
Okay. So oligarchs, super empowered individuals, have an outside influence on their society. Just take a look at the election, and I'll look at it from both sides. So we're well aware that Elon Musk has been a supporter of President Trump. He controls one of the most important communication mechanisms within the country, Twitter. Okay, many people only receive their information, their news feeds from Twitter. He has sufficient resources that he can fund a campaign. He held a lottery that allowed individuals to get $1 million if they were part of his pledge. All right. Other side, last week of the campaign, Bloomberg gave $50 million, okay, to Vice President Harris. Right? Those individuals aren't given that money with no strings attached. They're giving it because they want to influence the administration, that they want to influence the policies. And if we don't have sort of checks and balances, I think there was mention of monopoly earlier today, that the monopolies are never good. So if we don't have those checks and balances, then we're going to be at the whims of those individuals. Let me relate it back to a previous point in our history. So during the Industrial Revolution, right? We didn't know the rules when it started, and it was a disastrous period as we had the cultural impacts of moving from the farms to the cities, right? We locked kids in factories and we let them burn down. There was all other sorts of things that happened. But the promise of industrialization allowed us to feed the world. It allowed us to have the technology that we see today. It allowed us, each of us individually, are living a life of royalty 100, 200 years ago. And that's only because of industrialization. But it also brought the robber barons, right? Who were in it to build their empire, to build their resources. And it was our ability to collectively make a decision that society was not going to tolerate that, and to put governance on them to moderate their behavior and to ensure that those monopolies didn't have that unfair advantage over the public. We don't know the rules of this information age yet, but the same sort of issues are happening, and we collectively have to make a decision that we're not going to allow that in our society. And so I think working again with the companies, this is not a them versus us. It is how do we collectively solve this issue to ensure that all of society benefits.
I want to go back to something you talked about and raised earlier, which is about this regionalism or regionalization vice globalization.
Right.
What are the risks to those in this room of what I'm going to call the economic, social, political balkanization of our society and globally?
Okay.
How do we mitigate those risks?
Yeah. So in this this new environment that we have, the information is the currency, okay, that allows us to advance technology. And so we're starting to see a regionalization of data, okay? Countries are cutting off data flows. I think it was mentioned earlier that they're ensuring that any data that's for their country or within their region, depending on where you're at, is stored within that region so that it's not accessible to folks that would use it for nefarious purposes or for purposes that were against the interests of that country, right? The Chinese that I mentioned during the last panel, through their Silk Belt and Road initiative, they're collecting all of that data up, and so they have an unfair advantage, they have an outsized influence, and they have an ability to direct in certain countries their activities simply because of how much they know about them, how much data they have, and how they can use that to hold them hostage. So that regionalization that is happening as a response to globalization is going to impact all of our ability to share information across the globe. And it is that information, again, that allows for the greater advancement in terms of these technologies. All right. So it's going to happen. It's already happening. There's nothing you're going to do about it in terms of that regionalization, because it is a response to what these nations have seen as a direct threat. What we have to do is to form partnerships, alliances that allows us to share that information, that puts the right, again, protocols in place, but doesn't stifle our ability to share so that we have a greater value that's coming out of that information in terms of the technologies that are being developed. I would hope in terms of regionalization of information that when it is done, that we have someone who is sitting at the table, okay, not just in our region, when it's being done in other places around the world, and that the views and perspectives of a democratic society are incorporated into the rules that are being written so that it allows for a sharing of that information across. Understand, our adversaries have a different take on that. All right, so they're going to use information as a weapon. They're going to try to restrict global policies that would arrest their ability to meet their objectives. So remember that most of our adversaries, they're trying to build capabilities that leap us. We're the lead right now in most of them, but they want to leap over us, and having access to that information is what allows them to do so.
I could be here till Saturday asking you questions, so I am going to start to wrap up. At OODACon, we like to give the audience homework. Both last year and this year, we've talked about the rapidity of change that is concurrent with this realignment of global powers, all while there are no rules. Well, I wouldn't say no rules, but insufficient rules to govern all of this change and realignment. What can we in this room do to shape those rules? And if you have any ideas, what should those rules be?
All right, wow. Okay, so what can we do? So most of the folks who are attending this conference are leaders either within government or within industry. And so you do have the ability to influence what the rules are going to be. Now, within the United States, there's the AI executive order, the National Security Memorandum on artificial intelligence that directs those sort of partnerships that I talked about earlier, but it doesn't bring them to fruition. It's only going to happen if we engage, if you engage with government, if you sort of open kimono, so to speak, that's how I use that term, but allow them to come in under the tent, allow the government to understand, okay, what the technology is and where it's going. Help them in writing the rules, help them understand the value and benefits that it will bring to them. So every organization in the government has some goal, mission, or objective, right? How do you help them meet that? And by providing them an avenue to success, you're more likely to form the partnerships that we talked about that are going to help us shape the policies of the future. But again, it is that interaction that is necessary for us to develop the right rule sets. All right, so the last part of that question was, what do I think we ought to do in terms of the rules? Did I understand that correctly?
What do you think the rules should be?
So,
any examples you could provide for the homework assignment?
An example of what I think the rules should be. All right, I have no bloody idea, right?
That's a very candid response. That makes this more lively.
Right, but look, when I look at the advent of the atomic weapon, atomic bomb, it was scary. It was a threat, okay, to all of our existence. And because it was such a threat, we came together to establish policies that would allow us to control it or at least slow down its proliferation, okay, globally. I think that the technology that we're looking at now, whether it's AGI, ASI, synthetic biology, quantum computing, all have that same potential, maybe more, okay, in terms of a threat to us, and that we have to come together and agree on certain protocols that will ensure that we're able to control the proliferation of those technologies and to ensure that they're available for all of society. I think I see you saying it's time to go, right?
I see Bob lurking, but I asked for one more question, which is,
okay.
I'd be a remiss recovering journalist if I didn't ask the following. What am I missing? What have we not talked about that you cannot let those in this room leave without knowing in terms of the threat landscape?
Okay.
Just one thing.
All right, so I'm actually going to go back to what I said earlier about the rules and working with governments, that you have the ability to influence the change, to make the change happen that we want to see in this world. every one of your companies is on the cutting edge of technology. The U.S. government, while people may think we're in decline, we are number one, okay? All right, we're at the top of the world order, and we have the ability still to drive change in where we want the world to go to ensure that democratic values are instilled to the maximum extent possible. So what I would tell you is to not shy away from your responsibility to drive this country, to drive this world in the right direction. Stand up when you think that there needs to be change. Stand up when you think there needs to be additional rules put in place. Stand up when the government gets too much in your business that it stifles innovation that's necessary for our future success. So that would be the one thing that I would tell you, is that you have a voice in this.
I feel very motivated now. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, John.